Hello, everyone. Welcome to Straight Talk on Social Media. This is Ian Desher, Director of Nonprofit Marketing for Pivot Group, talking to you on what was a beautiful week in Portland and is now getting a little cloudy in preparation to rain on the weekend. I love the Northwest. I hope it is nice and sunny where you are. Um, as you know, if you've been here before, if you want to ask a question anytime during the webinar, there's a questions panel in your GoToWebinar control panel that you can use, and I'm happy to take any questions as we go or at the end. We're going to be talking today about the essential network. So this is not probably none of this information actually may come as a surprise to you, but I'm going to talk about what I think are the most important social media sites to be, and I'll explain why I'm going to talk about that in just a few minutes here. But first of all, let's jump in and talk about the news from the last few weeks. So first of all, a report came out recently saying that if you ask for likes on your Facebook page, or if you ask for shares, and this is particularly on your company page, if you put out content and you say, please share this or please like this, there is a chance that Facebook is going to penalize your page as a result, which would probably take the form of just not showing your posts and not putting them into people's news feeds. The reason for this is that Facebook is sort of trying to clean up the spam that gets put out there. There are lots of pages that will just ask people to like and share and and try to build up audiences in sort of a fake way. And so Facebook is really trying to take some measures against that. And so if you are, they will have their search engines looking for that sort of content, and if you ask people to like or share, your post may actually be penalized. So that's something to know about, something important to know about, because I think a lot of us do that. I think it's pretty natural when you are posting something to want to ask people to like it, or certainly to ask them to share it. And so just know that could present an issue for you. It's another way that Facebook is, trying their hardest to only put into the news feed, things that people really want to see, and or things that companies have paid to have put there. So that's this is sort of more in Facebook's ongoing effort to do that. Facebook did introduce a new tool called the Business Manager. This is a tool. It's actually for marketing agencies. Certainly would be one who would use it, but anybody who is managing a number of pages and putting ads out for maybe a number of different companies or pages. It's this new section that is really giving you a lot of tools to sort of streamline that work and that sort of thing. It could be useful not only for agencies like we are, but it could be useful for your company if you have different divisions of your companies that are doing Facebook ads, or if your company has a few different Facebook pages and you are managing them all in one place. It lets you do things like give administrative control to people to be administrators on the page without necessarily giving them login access. It also gives you the ability to run your ads and let other people administer your ads, again, without sort of giving them even deeper access. So just something to know about if it's something that may apply to you. Business Manager could be something that you want to check out. You can just go to, I believe it's just business.facebook.com, and that's where you'll see the information about that tool. Also, all my news is about Facebook this week. Sorry about that. But Facebook is actually going to reduce the amount of personal user information that it is giving to apps, at least by default. This is good news. This is has been a privacy concern for a long time, as so many things are on Facebook. But where you often see this information when you are, or this request for permission when you're signing up for an app, and it's saying, we want to have access to your friend list and to your profile information and access to post on your timeline and all sorts of things. And Facebook is really restricting the amount of information that you're going to give to an app. Now, an app can always ask for that information or ask for that access, but you can now deny it, and it's not sort of there by default for you to sign up for the app. So it's a good step toward privacy that Facebook has made, and something good both to know about as individual users, and if you're creating an app, something that's good to know about as well. So that's the news. Straight talk on the essential network. So what I'm going to do is I want to talk you through what I think are sort of the social networks that you really need to be on, and sort of in order of importance. And I'm doing this actually because I've noticed a handful of articles or conversations that I've had recently, or concerns that people have brought up about whether or not such and such social media service is dying. Right? Is Facebook dying? Is Twitter dying? Is LinkedIn dying? It's actually kind of amazing to me how many articles are written about and how much conversation happens about whether or not this or that social network is dying. And what I think is that those questions are all trying to get at something else. I don't actually think that that any social networks really are dying right now. We're still seeing, I mean, with the exception possibly of something like MySpace, right, or things that really are sort of on their way out, and failing. Most of the big ones that we think of are still prevalent, are still around, are still gaining in number of users and things like that. So, people will say things like, well, Facebook is dying because the next generation is only using Instagram. Well, so I want to talk through some of that, where I still see, as of this moment in 2014, where I see as still the most essential places that you need to be. And so I'll do those one at a time, like I said, in sort of order of priority. And as always, as always, if you have any questions as we go, by all means, go ahead and ask them. All right, and so here's what this is again the reason for this webinar overall is just this concern that social media may be dying in some way. So first of all, number one for me is still Facebook. It's not that I'm a total Facebook junkie. I'm not paid by Facebook to give you this information. It's that I truly still believe it is the most important place for you to be. Here are the reasons for that. First of all, Facebook really is not going anywhere. It has well over 1 billion users at this point. It is it's a very successful social network. It continues to be so. The number of users is still growing, and yes, the growth may have slowed down some, but that really is because they start to run out of the number of people even available to have access to the social network. So I mean, just imagine what happens when Facebook is fully authorized in China. I mean, there's still people in China who are using it illegally, but imagine what happens when it becomes legal in China. It could burst through to the 2nd billion really easily. So it's still a huge number of people using who are on it, and that number is still growing. And more importantly, usage has not slowed down. The amount of people who use Facebook regularly is huge. I think it's something like 2/3 of their users, and so we're talking like 600 or 700 million people are checking in on their Facebook accounts at least once a day. So that's a huge number of people who are on the social network each day. The number of page views that Facebook has is still, the highest above any other website. The number of time people are spending on Facebook is still, greater than on other sites. So I mean, it's just, the usage of Facebook is not slowing down. It's not like people have stopped using Facebook or anything like that. And the idea, this sort of thing that's popular to say now, that young people don't use Facebook, that's not true. It's possible that that Facebook is not as popular among young people as other social networks, and of course we'll talk about Instagram in a minute. But to say that young people aren't on Facebook is simply not the case. Young people have Facebook accounts just like they have their Instagram accounts, and it may not be the primary place that they are gathering, but that is that is still it's still something that they all have. And even more importantly than that, I mean, unless your primary demographic that you're going after is people who are 13 to 18, that doesn't matter as much for you right now, right? Right now, Facebook is still so important because among people who are over 18, there's still this massive amount of usage and that sort of thing. And so, I've for each one of these, I've sort of given a, well, what does it mean when people say that it's dying? What does that actually mean? Well, what people, mean when they say Facebook is dying, I think, is you know, they're really saying, "Oh, I sure am annoyed by Facebook. Facebook is annoying me. I don't like the privacy stuff scares me, and I don't like the changes that they make, and you know, people can be really annoying on Facebook, and I've kind of had it's kind of Facebook overdose. I've had too much of Facebook, and so I kind of get the sense that that's what most people are saying when they say that it's dying. It's not that it's really not going anywhere anytime soon. And the bottom line then, again, I sort of have for each one of these, the lowdown, right, is you are expected to be there. If your customers go onto Facebook and they search for your company, they expect to find you there. And that I think is more important and speaks volumes more than any of this does, right? It is just assumed these days that companies are going to have a Facebook presence. And if you don't have a Facebook presence, then you seem out of touch, out of step. And so that is that is the most important. That's why Facebook is my number one. It is expected that you have a presence on Facebook in a way that's not expected, I think, on any other social network. And so the challenge then with Facebook, I list a challenge for each one of these too, so you can sort of see the framework that we're going to do today in this webinar. The challenge on Facebook is being seen, especially with Facebook's new rules. Facebook is being perfectly open about the fact that it wants companies to pay to have their content shown. And so, right now we're all seeing far, our numbers are far smaller in terms of the number of people who are seeing our posts and then engaging with them than they used to be. And that's because Facebook has purposely, sort of hidden those things from the news feed so that, so that we will all pay to have sponsored stories, pay to be showing up in the news feed. And so, the decision we all have to make is, well, to what extent is it worth, is it worth making sure our message is getting into the newsfeed? And probably the answer lies in, well, it depends on what we're posting. We don't probably need to put out a sponsored story for every single post that we write, right? However, there are some things that we really want to make sure get into people's news feeds. And so for those things, it may well be worth paying to have them seen. So number 2A, if you'll notice what I'm doing there, is there's going to be a tie for second place. Number 2A is Twitter. Twitter is home to tons of cultural conversation. When the Oscars were going on, any major sporting event that's going on, Twitter, people are sitting there talking about it on Twitter, huge numbers of tweets that happen, hashtags go viral talking about cultural events. And so it's really where a lot of our cultural conversation happens on social media. And it's because, in general, for most people, most people who have Twitter accounts have them open to public view, and so whatever you put there is going to be something that somebody else can read, and so people who aren't necessarily friends with each other can have a whole conversation about things that are going on. There's a really large and really active user base. It's not as large, not nearly as large as Facebook is, but those who are using it tend to be active and again, engaged in these conversations. It's a great place, I think, to make unexpected connections. I will admit that I was not sold on Twitter until about a year ago, when I started to see how it could make connections between people who were not necessarily friends, right? Where you could end up connecting with people who you had met professionally, or who you had heard of, or who had heard of you, and it's an informal way to get in touch with somebody, and the commitment level is pretty small, 140 characters or fewer, right? Does not take that long to write. And so I really think it is a great way to make these connections. I have been introduced to a lot of people on Twitter now who I've ended up then meeting in real life because of things that we are, because of shared interests, shared connections, things like that. And another advantage of Twitter, it is more popular with young people. I won't necessarily say more popular than Facebook because I don't think anybody could quantify that. But it does tend to be popular with young people. So if that's a demographic you're interested in, then Twitter is an important place to be. So what does it mean when people say that Twitter is dying? Well, what I think they mean by that is there's a lot of noise on Twitter. It really is. It can be hard to break through that noise. It can feel like you're just, putting a drop of water into an ocean. And I think Twitter especially can have that feeling. So, I think that's fair to say. It doesn't mean that the social network is dying. It amazes me. I mean, literally there was an article about whether or not Twitter is dying. Just came out a couple weeks ago, and I thought, I mean, really, we're going to say this after the Oscars and Ellen DeGeneres posted that selfie with all those famous actors in it that broke Twitter because so many people were responding to it. I mean, it just kind of shocked me that right after that we're hearing an article about is Twitter dying. So I think what people mean is, there's just a lot of noise there. The lowdown, it really might be worth your time. It might be worth your time to invest in Twitter. And the challenge, which is very related to that, is finding the time. Because as I've said before and will continue to say, Twitter, I think, requires sort of day-to-day maintenance, day-to-day posting. The expectation, if you're going to have a lively Twitter feed, is that you are posting, daily, if not more often. So 2B is Instagram. Instagram is sort of quickly rising as one of the most important places to be. It's enjoying great popularity right now. If any of you have sort of followed this whole very silly, I mean, I haven't been following it, but this whole very silly Solange, Jay-Z, Beyonce thing that happened recently, so much of it had to sort of centered around what was going on Solange's Instagram account, right? So it's just really funny that's become sort of part of our cultural conversation. Heavy emphasis on mobile with Instagram. Yes, they do have, Instagram profiles that you can view on a normal computer these days, but the emphasis is still strongly on mobile. That's how most people are using it and engaging with it. And it's a lightweight network in that it does not ask much of you. You're not putting in tons of profile information like you do with Facebook. It really is just sort of, it's you and hey, here are some things that I find interesting. Here are pictures of things that I'm taking that I'm interested in, without a whole lot of the baggage and the privacy worries of Facebook in the same way, because it's not asking you your whole life story. So I think it has that sort of going for it as well. And it's very popular with young people. I mean, again, I would not ever say that Facebook is going away or that young people are not on it. But what I would say is that Instagram is probably more popular with young people than Facebook, almost undoubtedly. And I'm talking about young people, I'm talking 13 to 25, right? So if that is your demographic, if that's the people you're going after, it's really something to consider in terms of getting into. Those may not be your customers right now, right? It may be that what you have to do is wait 10 years and see, okay, what social networks are predominant right now, and then find out sort of what's, how to capture those people. But if that is your demographic, then it's a place you need to be. So what do people mean when they say Instagram is dying? Well, guess what? Actually, nobody says that about Instagram yet. Nobody's right now forecasting Instagram's death. It's on too much of a rise right now. But that will happen. The lowdown, so it is sort of looking like Instagram is the next big thing, right? I mean, I think if the reason it has sort of risen for me in terms of its importance for companies is just because of this popularity that it has, right? That's why it's become 2B for me. Probably a year ago, I would have put Instagram down among 4 or 5 in terms of the importance for companies paying attention to it. The challenge for Instagram, I think is being a company, right? Instagram is a place for individuals to hang out and share their interests with each other and that sort of thing. I think the challenge on Instagram is when you're a company, how to engage in that space and make yourself interesting and not make yourself look like you're just trying to sell, right? And that's a challenge on any social network, but I think particularly with Instagram. Number 3, Google Plus. I sort of cringe putting them this high, but it's still very important because it is Google. And why is that important? Well, because of the search engine optimization, right? Google is more and more taking into account whether or not you have a Google Plus profile set up when they consider where to put you in the search rankings. So you and another company, basically equal in Google's eyes, but they have a Google Plus page and your company doesn't. They are going to be put higher in search engine rankings than you are. And so, by the nature of who's behind this social network, it's important for companies to at least have that Google Plus presence. It is growing. I do still think some of that is sort of false growth in that they're, forcing YouTube users to also have a Google Plus profile and things like that. But it is also growing in the amount of people using it. It's slow. It's still nothing like Facebook or Twitter or anything like that, but it is growing. And again, I'm calling it sort of a necessary evil. Evil's a harsh word, but it's a necessary evil, I think, right now. So what do people mean when it's dying? Well, they mean who uses Google Plus, right? And that still is not. I mean, the number of users that they have is nothing like the number of people who actually use it on a regular basis. Whereas with Facebook, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, 2/3 of their user base are using it daily. With Google Plus, it's far fewer than that. And the lowdown, it's going to, help you be found if you're on Google Plus. So I mean, it is important to be there simply because it will help you be found in search rankings. It's just that simple. And the challenge is, who wants to be at an unattended party, right? I mean, Pivot has a Google Plus page, and I will be really honest with you and tell you that we pretty much let it sit there dormant. We change it if there's ever, a big change in terms of the description of our company or things we want to add in, that sort of thing. But I'm not posting there on a regular basis. Because again, it's not a place where I'm finding lots of engagement. So that is the challenge there. It's a place you need to be, but not necessarily a place you're ever going to have a lot of return in terms of customer engagement. Number 4, I think, is LinkedIn. Now, it is still the number one place for networking online. So actually, for certain businesses, it is possible that LinkedIn is number 1 even in terms of places you need to be, or number 2. Because depending on what your business is and how much you rely on professional networking, it may be absolutely crucial. It's still a great way to make connections with people. I think after Twitter, LinkedIn is probably the place where I've made the greatest number of sort of random connections with people, and it's because that's what it's built for. It's built for professional networking. Company pages on LinkedIn, I think, are better than on any other social network except for Facebook. Facebook, I think, still has a great company page, but LinkedIn, I think, is sort of second best there. Twitter doesn't do anything special for business profiles. Pinterest has business pages, but they're not well developed. Instagram's not doing anything special for businesses. So, I think LinkedIn is still a great place to be able to show off your company profile. It's super important for recruiting, and again, if that's part of what's involved with your business, it could make LinkedIn all the more important for you. So what do people mean when they say that LinkedIn is dying? Well, it's not as social as the others. Yeah, it's true. It's not for engaging individually and personally in the way that other social networks are. It really is more about business. That doesn't mean that it's dying. The lowdown, again, I think you need to have a presence in this space. I think it's important for companies, on the biggest professional networking site, you'd be silly as a company to not have some sort of presence there where people can find you, even if networking is not something that you're interested in or that you do a lot or that helps your business. Still, to have a presence there, for people who may find you, I think is really important. And the challenge, I think, is maintaining your page, just because there's not a whole lot of incentive to, right? You're not. I mean, for me, I guess I've never wanted to go and update Pivot's status on our LinkedIn page. It's, again, because I don't feel like I'm going to get a lot of value for that in terms of engagement. Similar issue to with Google Plus there. Number 5, I think, is Pinterest. And again, a year ago, I think Pinterest would have been higher for me, and it sort of has been knocked down a couple tiers for me. It is still, I think, one of the most attractive sites out there, and certainly, I mean, top 5 for me is no slouch, because there are endless social networks out there, and Pinterest is still very important. It's very attractive. They are making more moves toward business in terms of business pages that I mentioned, ads, things like that. So they, I think, almost more than any social network except maybe Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, sort of. They're doing more to engage with businesses. Certainly, I think actually more than Google Plus and more than Instagram. There's a unique target audience here, right? And it is still the only social network out there that is predominantly, its user base is, the vast majority is women, something like 2/3 to 1/3 women over men. And it does, often, I mean, the stereotype of Pinterest is, it's people who are, if not necessarily stay-at-home moms, but it's people who are interested in crafting and in cooking and in, what you might call more sort of domestic pursuits, whether they're men or women, right? And so there is a unique target audience that you can tap into if depending on what your company is and that sort of thing. And it is popular among younger people also. This is one of those social networks that is still sort of emerging, and it's not something that, I've never heard anybody say, "Oh, shoot, my mom just joined Pinterest, and so I don't think it's cool anymore." That's not happening. So what do people mean when they say that it's dying? They're saying it's already a has-been, right? It sort of has reached its peak, and now it's tapering off. And I don't know that that's necessarily true. Although, like I said, it's not, I think, as important as I would have said it is a year ago. The lowdown is that it could be your perfect niche in terms of finding just the right audience for you. Again, depending on what your company is and that sort of thing, Pinterest might really be perfect for you. And the challenge, I think, is finding content. Again, unless you're the type of company that is perfect for Pinterest, it could be a challenge to say, well, what sort of images or videos am I going to post to start creating these pin boards and things like that? I think that could be the challenge for some companies. So those are the top 5. I guess it was top 6 because I had 2 number 2s. Honorable mention goes to YouTube. Would be maybe number 2 or 3, but I don't think of it as much as a social network, although it's sort of one of those borderline cases. Vimeo, similarly, though less important than YouTube, I think. Yelp, super important to have. People asking people to review you to make sure that you've claimed your company space on Yelp. I would have put it at a number 6 if I'd gone that high. Vine, I think, people are using it more and more. The companies that are using it are having a lot of fun with it and some good success with it. Check out Dunkin' Donuts on Vine if you want to see a good example. Reddit and Dig, not huge social networks, but for the people who use them, they tend to be really active and engaged users. So if you can get yourself, in on Reddit and Dig, those can be really useful for you. And then Tumblr, which is one of the best sort of blog platforms in terms of making social connections, and then just whether blogs in general, whether if you have a blog, also these are sort of borderline things in terms of social media. So some quick takeaways before I let you go. Still, I think the most important thing, and still the thing that I'm seeing some of our clients not do before they take a leap into social network, is think about what your overall purpose and goals are, right? If it's to sell products, well, okay, that's not a bad goal, but it's not necessarily what you're going to be most successful at on social media. If it's customer engagement, that's great. If it is, giving people a place so you can do customer service, a place where people can, come and express their concerns, that's great. If it's a forum for your leadership, that's great. Just make sure you know what those goals are and what success looks like for you on social media before you jump in. And it also may, as you define your goals, that may help you realize which social networks deserve your time more, right? If one of your primary goals is engaging with the youngest audience, Instagram is going to rise to the forefront for you. So be where you need to be. And, the flip side of that is don't be where you don't need to be, right? Do what you have time for, but then don't do more than that. And so make sure that you are on Facebook. I mean, I would just say that flat out. Facebook needs to be part of it. And then after that, figure out, okay, what is most important. If you have time enough to do all 6 of the ones that I talked about, well, that's great if you can really do them well. And if it makes sense to do that within what your goals are. Don't do it because you feel like you have to do it. Don't, you know, not even with, not with Instagram, not with Twitter, not with Pinterest or LinkedIn. Don't follow any of them just because you feel like, hey, this is super popular right now, and so we have to do it. That's not going to help you unless you have a real goal for it. And then don't give up because there are challenges, because you will find challenges. You will tire of maintaining your page. You will, find occasionally that people are saying something not nice about you. I mean, you will hit challenges, and don't let that, sort of keep you from going ahead and sort of trying to meet your social networking goals. And then have an exit strategy if you are trying out a certain social media site and you're not sure. We think Pinterest is going to work really well for us. We think we're going to really engage with people. We're going to try it for 3 months. If after 3 months it doesn't work, we are going to have an exit strategy in case for some reason we realize, this is just not at all worth our time, not worth the low level of engagement that we're getting. So those are my takeaways, and that's the end of the webinar. Thank you so much. I'm a minute or two over. Sorry about that. Next time, Friday, June 13th. Because it's Friday the 13th, my focus topic is going to be things to fear on social media. So we'll have a fun time with that one. For our telecommunications clients, Dave Neustrauten's next Straight Talk on Telco Marketing webinar, Wednesday the 28th at 11 o'clock Pacific time. Thank you all so much. Have a great weekend. Remember to keep your media social and your talk straight.